contributed to 2 picks that really took away scoring opportunities. And I think the thing is that Philly just couldn't come through. And they had a great year, and a year that, look, most people coming in thought that they would be just starting to develop, with a new coach. And Nick Foles, you got to credit him for turning it around. But 195 yards in a game against a Saints offense that, first of all, normally puts out more points. You just can't do that. It's a poor performance from Nick Foles. He threw 2 touchdowns, but the yardage not there. LaShawn McCoy unable to run the ball for that much, averaging 3.7 yards a carry. The Saints just stepped up. You look at Ingram. He ran for 97 yards. That's just an amazing performance by him. And Drew Brees still finished with more yards in that game as well. Philadelphia, they stopped Jimmy Graham, but it just got spread all around. Meacham, Stills, Sproles. It was, I don't know. It's just, the Eagles couldn't contain them. They tried to focus in on certain players. They just, great job spreading the ball around. Without those 2 picks, it could be a completely bigger deficit for the Eagles. But the Eagles, you know what? I will say this, though, Carl and Jake, you guys were 100% right about the picks. And I thought that this Eagles defense would get gashed. But they impressed me there. So, when we're talking about the Eagles, where do you guys think the Eagles go from here? And, Jake?
They go up. Because, let's not forget, they're in the NFC East. And now they have some playoff experience under their belt. This is clearly their division to win. I expect them to make to go one step further in the playoffs next year, and I think anything short of that would be a disappointment for this team. I think the sky's the limit. I think Nick Foles is at a breakout season. I think Chip Kelly has more than proved himself here. I think they have to work on building up that secondary, but they've got a real gem in Brandon Boykin at the cornerback position. Very underrated player. This team's played well. They exceeded my expectations, and I hope for their sake and for the NFL's sake that they continue to do well next year, because this is an exciting team, and Chip Kelly really is one of the great minds in football.
Okay, and Carl, where are the Eagles headed?
I think the Eagles are headed for good things. This, as Jake said, this is a weaker division. So now I look forward, and I think really you need to look for what their bigger needs are. As pointed out during the game, they do not have a great safety, so that's definitely something to look for in the draft. And that may be, that's obviously a big need, but I think a guy that really just the whole idea, I think, is the secondary, really, I think needs help. So I see them drafting maybe a cornerback and a safety, definitely a safety, and also probably a linebacker. So really building with the draft to make this defense better, because obviously this offense is explosive, great weapons, and I think Nick Foles can someday be an elite quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I would think they're headed upwards too. Definitely. They had a great year. Here's the one piece of history that is against them. The 2003 regular season, then 2004 regular season, only time there has been back-to-back NFC East champions. Since then, switching off every year, different teams from 2005 on. Honestly, the NFC East is like that. That's the truth. You think it's a good team, then it's not. You think they have the ability to win, and they just disappoint you. No key injuries in the postseason this year for this team. No Super Bowl champions from the NFC East. So, maybe, but it is tough. It will be hard. I expect the Redskins to do better next year. I expect Dallas to just be the same old Dallas, a team that always seems to find their way into it and then blow it at the end. But Philadelphia headed in good directions. I think they do have to work on their secondary. I think defense is definitely the number one for them, despite actually having, I think they played well defensively during this game for much of the game. But definitely improving on defense, and I think they are headed in good directions. Now, for the Saints, this team obviously started the year really, really good, and after that loss to Seattle, things didn't look good for them, and, they dropped. I think they dropped in a lot of people's minds, and people started to undervalue them a bit. Do you think this team can beat Seattle? Don't pick it, but do you think they have the potential to beat Seattle? Carl.
Well, I think any team can beat any team in the playoffs. This is a rematch of a game a few years ago where everybody thought Seattle was going to lose very badly to New Orleans, the defending Super Bowl champions at that time. I mean, anybody has a chance in the playoffs, but Seattle is playing such a high level of football, and this New Orleans team is just not there right now. They are not playing a stellar brand of football. I believe that Seattle's secondary is going to eat up Drew Brees, truly. I do not think they have the receivers that are going to be able to... like Jimmy Graham, matching up. I believe he can be taken out by the secondary of the Seahawks, made almost irrelevant, truly. I mean, he only had 44 yards against an Eagles defense that is much worse than the Seattle pass defense. I just don't see any of the weapons New Orleans has truly beating the Seahawks, so it's going to be a very large uphill battle, starting with that battle of the New Orleans passing attack.
And Jake, what are your thoughts on the Saints and their Super Bowl prospects?
The Saints and the Super Bowl prospects. I'm not going to overlook New Orleans again. If they can continue, first of all, could you imagine if Jerry Jones did not get rid of Rob Ryan in Dallas? We might be looking at a very different Dallas team, and it could really change the landscape of the NFL. But he's not. He's in New Orleans now. If they can pressure Russell Wilson, if they can contain Marshawn Lynch, they can compete in this game, and they could absolutely pull it off. I personally don't think they will, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
Yeah, it looks good for them. I think that they have a shot at it. As long as you have Drew Brees, you have a shot. Star quarterbacks do that for a team. But the game against Seattle will definitely be... I think it'll be a good game, though we know Seattle has the potential to blow them out. So, we are on to the games from today. And we're going to start with the only one that all of us got wrong. All of us picked the Bengals. And the San Diego Chargers shock the world, and they go into Cincinnati, and they win this one 27-10. So, Carl, get us started. What were your thoughts after seeing this game?
I really wanted to pick San Diego for this game, and I couldn't push myself to do it. And I got to hand it to them. They had a very solid game today. This was the largest spread of any game. They were minus, I believe, it was either 6.5 or 7.5. The other games were all within 3 or so. And the Chargers had the biggest win of the day by 17 over the Bengals. This game never really... I mean, it really didn't feel close for a while. I mean, it was 10-7 at halftime, but the second half was all Chargers. You know, you've got to look at a full 20 unanswered points, and truly not a great day from Philip Rivers. 128 passing yards. He would only pass the ball 16 times. But he had a touchdown, no picks, only sacked once. Altogether, not great, but a pretty good day. The true thing that proved, I think, a lot better than I thought it was the Chargers' running game. The Chargers' running game went for 196 yards. That is a very surprising number to me, led by a team that really doesn't have a star running back. I mean, they have Matthews, they have Woodhead, and they kind of traded off. But it's really surprising for a team that only averages 122 yards. So I'm very impressed by the San Diego running game, and truly impressed by their whole team effort. Obviously, shutting down a great quarterback, or maybe not great, but a strong quarterback in Andy Dalton, limiting him, not limiting him to low yardage. He did throw 326. He had 2 picks and just did not look great this entire game. Really held back.
Yeah, and now, Jake, your thoughts on the San Diego performance and the disappointment for the Bengals.
I wasn't expecting this from Andy Dalton, and I'd have to say that this is the single most disappointing performance of his career. He did not come through today. This time he was at home against the Chargers, his 3rd consecutive playoff appearance, and again he falls short. Marvin Lewis again falling short, and the wait continues for Cincinnati. I just don't... You really got to feel for Cincinnati, but Andy Dalton has to come through. At some point, he has to come forward, take the reins of this team, step up, prove he's a leader, and come through. Today was his chance to do that, and he did not. And I won't blame Bengals fans if they are pessimistic about Andy Dalton. Yes, losing both of your starting cornerbacks is troubling. Cincinnati overcame more injuries than most people give them credit for, I realize. And I have to, again, credit them for that. However, this loss falls on Dalton's shoulders. Something has to be done. I don't think it's time to throw the towel on him at all, but he's got to do a lot of work this offseason. He has to prove that he has what it takes to be a leader in the NFL. And for Phillip Rivers, I'm happy for him that he got a playoff win. I'm very impressed by Mike McCoy. He has all of a sudden made a late first for perhaps Coach of the Year. And, you know, they made some changes to the front office. They've made changes in terms of staff. And it's working for the Chargers. I'm excited for what they have to say next week. This is really an underrated team. It's one of those teams that's got the nobody believed in us factor working for them, and I think it's about time that we watch out for them.
Yeah, look, the Bengals, they had everything aligning for them. Sure, they had the injuries, but people still thought they could win this game. People still thought, including me, that they could win a Super Bowl. And it just didn't work out. It was bad. Honestly, there's no better word to describe this performance than bad. They march down the field, they get a Mike Nugent field goal before half, and Bengals fans have to feel good. But then, the second half, 20 unanswered points, and they couldn't do anything. Dawson, I wasn't necessarily only disappointed in his numbers and how he played. I was disappointed in his decision-making. You know, they have a fourth down there at the end. It's 20-10. They get the stop with a chance to ice the game. The Chargers had a chance to ice it. They were unable to do anything. They get the ball back. It is 4th and short. Andy Dalton decides to go deep into a player that there's no way he's going to hit him. It would be a miracle. Just poor decision making. You cannot throw 2 interceptions. You cannot throw 29 completions out of 51 attempts. My opinion, they gave the ball too much to Dalton. I understand that he is your quarterback, but when he just isn't doing right, when he isn't able to complete passes, you have to start realizing that, look, Giovanni Bernard, he got 12 carries, 45 yards, shut down. 3.8 yards, not enough. Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis, 8 of 42. Look, they finished with 113 yards on 25 carries. And then on the other side, this is Ronnie Brown. I mean, really? 8 carries for 77 yards? You really let him do it? Just massive game for him. And Phillip Rivers didn't have to do much. I'm disappointed. Honestly, I'm very, very, very disappointed in this Bengals team. Now, as you said, talking about the Chargers, you're right. Mike McCoy has done a phenomenal job with this team. And the Chargers look dangerous. It's going to be very difficult. Very difficult next round. But I think they can do it. But they will need a lot of help. They will need some luck. But the Chargers team has shown they're able to beat good teams. They're able to compete with the best of them. Okay, so next up, when we look at the Bengals, Jake, you touched on this a little bit. This is, the 3rd year in a row they have lost in the first round. So I'll start with you, Jake. Just like the Eagles, where do they go from here?
It's not going to get any easier in this division. I believe the Cleveland Browns are trending up. The Steelers proved to be a threat this year. The Ravens might be able to get things together next year. The Bengals have a lot on their plate. And again, I think this comes down to Andy Dalton stepping up, taking his career by the reins. This is what the NFL is about. And this is really what ultimately determines if this team's a championship-winning team. Can a quarterback come through and say, am I going to be a good quarterback or am I going to be a great quarterback? This is the off-season, and next season is going to be the defining season of Andy Dalton's career. And we have to find out if we can still take this guy seriously